Good evening. This is an LALATE special report on the stimulus package. Part 1 in a 4-part series about the stimulus package. Part 1 in the series, the stimulus check. Part 2, EIDL. Part 3, Paycheck Protection Program. And tonight, Part 4, the Main Street loan. If you are an individual, you need to pay attention to the stimulus check part in this 4-part series. But if you're a business owner, you need to pay attention to all 4 parts. Tonight, the Main Street loan. It's the least discussed of all the different mechanisms out there. It was announced late on April 9th with not much fanfare, and to this date, little is still known about it. But if you're a business owner, this might be very important for you. Before the stimulus package was passed, the Sba Loan disaster relief plan was adopted. It was pre-stimulus package. The Sba Loan is a loan different from the PPP loan that is effectuated by the SBA, Small Business Administration. You apply to them through your business lender, and those loans have been approved. They have been funded. There have been cases of people being funded as much as $500,000. It's a loan. It's not a grant. It's paid over, I believe, 30 years at about 3% interest rate, which for some might not be a great deal in lieu of the current lending environment and current interest rates. But tonight, the Main Street loan, something approved after the stimulus package, is actually not part of the stimulus package, but part of our series about what's going on. The Main Street loan was announced by the Federal Reserve. It's for loans $1 million to $25 million or more. It can apply for bigger businesses, communities, counties, cities, and large churches as well. On April 9th, the Main Street loan was announced by the Federal Reserve. It is arguably the first Federal Reserve administered loan since the outbreak of coronavirus. LALATE has called it the Main Street loan because that was its original termination or terminology announced with that Fed news statement. But who is eligible and how does it work? The Main Street loan, being administered by the Fed, has very few details in its first few days. We don't know about where it's going to be processed, how it's going to be processed, or when you can apply for the loan. But we know a few bits and tidbits that are worth staying in focus about. The loan is for businesses. It's not for individuals. It's also for communities, cities, states, and also places of worship. The amount of a loan is much bigger than anything we have heard in this coronavirus period. The amount of the loan starts at a minimum of $1 million. It goes up to $25 million, but the wording of the announcement suggests the loan might be in excess of $25 million because it says it may exceed at $25 million at an amount when, quote, eligible to the eligible borrower's existing outstanding and committed but undrawn debt. So how much is the loan and what is it dependent upon? The announcement says it shall not exceed 4 times the eligible borrower's 2019 earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, whichever is less. But the loan does have a $1 million minimum. Quote, our country's highest priority must be to address this public health crisis, providing care for the ill and limiting the further spread of the virus, Jerome Powell said in his new statement. Quote, the Fed's role is to provide as much relief and stability as we can during this period of constrained economic activity, and our actions today will help ensure the eventual recovery is as vigorous as possible. How much money is there in this loan? CNBC is reporting that the total value of the program is $600 billion. What are the rates? And we've been talking about rates through this 4-part series. Quote, the terms would see an interest rate of equal to the Fed's secure overnight financing rate, currently 0.01%, plus 250 to 400 basis points with a 4-year maturity, which is interesting. This is a 4-year maturity. So what other relief has been offered that is quite different than this? Obviously, it's the SBA loan. It was announced first. It's administered by the SBA. Applicants have already been receiving that money. There's also the EIDL. That's been processed, and payments can start this week and over the next few weeks. And for businesses, that's up to about $10,000. EIDL is administered by the SBA. Finally, the PPP. That's administered by local lenders, is funded by the Treasury, which the Fed has promised will buy back the loans to alleviate the balance sheet strain on lenders. But in the case of bigger businesses that don't qualify as small businesses, the Main Street program might be the best choice. Again, minimum is $1 million, maximum is at least $25 million, but might go higher. And the loan is dependent upon 4 times the borrower's 2019's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, with a 4-year maturity rate. Interest rate is 0.01% plus 250 to 400 basis points. How do you apply for this? Where do you apply for this? Who processes it? At the moment, none of those answers have been given. Ultimately, this is a Federal Reserve administered program, so focus on the Federal Reserve, talk to your lending institution, and anyone that administers federal lending instruments similar to this might be able to assist you. This is the final in our 4-part series on the stimulus package. It started with the SBA loan, but has now included Part 1 in our series, the stimulus check, Part 2, EIDL, Part 3, the PPP loan, and finally, the current Main Street loan. As reported on LALATE last week, Steve Mnuchin and the president both indicated they would go back to members of Congress to get additional lending for these instruments, for PPP, for EIDL, and for stimulus checks. They did that, and members of Congress rejected that offer. So will further funding for coronavirus victims or businesses impacted by a coronavirus be given? It is expected. How and when is still unsure. As always, the situation is very fluid. LALATE is on top of the story and has appreciated your DMs, your tweets, your emails. Keep them up. Your information has been critical, and your attention to us has been appreciated. We will stay on the story and update you as it happens. Stay with LALATE for more. Thank you and good evening.